Now you've come out with a new book called Skip the Line, which kind of addresses a lot of the same issues. What for you was different about Skip the Line than Choose Yourself, or what made you
That's
want
such
to
a
write
great
this?
question because I had to think a lot about this. What am I going to say that's different and unique? And I don't want to just repeat Choose Yourself. So Choose Yourself was mostly about, it had two main ideas. One is, you know, like many people, when you find success and failure, lots of things happen. And I had gone broke several times, and life's not always easy. And you know, uh, I wrote about how I bounced back. I wrote about how uh, the other concept is in society, there's all these gatekeepers. So if you want to, as a classic example, if you want to publish a book, you have to get an agent. Then you have to get a publishing company to like you. You have to get an editor to want to edit your book. You have to get a bookstores to carry your book. So there's all these gatekeepers that decide if your book is a success or not. But you can also choose yourself. You could say, I'm going to write a book and upload it to Amazon and self-publish it. And there used to be a stigma around self-publishing, but now there isn't because many self-published books, many books that were originally self-published became massive successes. So The Martian by Andy Weir was originally self-published. 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James was originally self-published. So there's a lot of books out, like self-published books actually sell more copies on Amazon than regular published books. I don't think many people know that. So
Wow.
in every industry, the gatekeepers are going away. And you could say, well, what about legal? What about medical? Well, there's LegalZoom, which kind of got rid of the gatekeepers on a lot of legal work. So if I'm starting a business and I need a lawyer, instead of spending $30,000 for, basic corporation agreements, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but some businesses, they will charge you that.
Yeah.
You could do it for $10 or $100, whatever. And so in general, I could choose myself to start a business. I could choose myself to write a book or make a movie. Obviously, YouTube, there's a million people that get more views than on every YouTube clip than all the best TV shows combined.
Yeah.
So, it's a whole new world. And the concept is that anything you want to do, you can choose yourself to do it. Like, trying to think of some. Oh, Sarah Blakely is a great example. She had never made a piece of clothing in her life, and now she's the founder of Spanx, which is basically an underwear company,
Yeah.
and she's a billionaire from it. And she was selling fax machines door to door when she came up with the idea for Spanx. She knew nothing about how to design clothes, how to manufacture them, how to sell them, but she chose herself. She gave herself permission to do it. So that's where Choose Yourself goes and explains why this is happening in society, and it also explains what are the basic things everybody suffers, everybody goes through some failures. What are the basic things you have to keep in mind, and what are some stories where that using these basic ideas you can really start bouncing back and become a success, and that includes choosing yourself in whatever industry. Skip the Line takes it a lot further because I didn't really give, in Choose Yourself, I didn't really give very specific techniques to accomplish the things you need to accomplish when you want to succeed at something. So let's say, you could either be young and like 27 years old and you're trying to find your passion and then you're trying to succeed at it as quickly as possible. Or you could be in your 40s, 50s, even 60s, and you could say, look, I've been an accountant for 30 years and now I want to do something different with my life. Or maybe you were laid off in this economic lockdown and you're not sure what to do next, but you always wanted to be a chef or start a restaurant and you were tired of being a social media manager for Procter and Gamble. So if you want to change careers and passions, which I'm sure you've probably done at points in your life,
Yep.
everyone is going to tell you, James, you can't do that. What are you even thinking of? There are people who went to school for this. You can't do this. There are
Yeah.
people who have 20 years of experience. What makes you think you're just going to go into this field and do it? Maybe do it as a hobby. Maybe, read about it. and enjoy, but you got responsibilities, you got a mortgage to pay or whatever. People, and I've changed careers completely 5 or 6 times, maybe more. Every single time, people have said to me, and by the way, when I say people, the closer they are to you, the more likely they are to say it. They're going to
Yes.
say, James, you can't do that. You can't. What makes you think you could skip the line? That's such a competitive field. What makes you think anyone's going to go with you when they can go with, this person who won awards doing this? Like, one time I wanted to start a hedge fund. I wanted to be a professional investor and invest other people's money.
And
And
by
I
the
went
way,
to
this is after you like lost a ton of money and you were broke, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
so I lost everything
Yeah.
from investing. Like I went from, and it's I can jokingly say it now, but it was sad then. It was all cash, $15 million in my checking account, and
God.
no one is gonna feel sorry for me because of that. But about a year later, I had $143 left at cash. It wasn't like I was all in one stock and I never cashed out. I had cashed out from selling a company and that I worked really hard on. And then a year or two later, I was dead broke and I was so depressed. I was miserable and I had to bounce back. I was really depressed.
Yeah.
But then let's say you bounce back. You've chosen yourself. You said, okay, I could do it again, which I didn't really believe at first, but I had to convince myself, and I use techniques I describe in Choose Yourself. But let's say now I want to start a hedge fund, for instance. What do you do when, like, so a friend of mine, I said, hey, what should I do? Maybe I can get a job or something first. And he's like, oh my gosh, James. First, there's a lot of people in this business. And he was like looking at me like he felt sorry for me. Like I could
Yeah.
see it in his eyes. I wasn't an idiot while he was talking to me. And he was like, James, first you got to get an MBA. Then you should probably work for Goldman Sachs, which, they kind of only hire really young people who went to Harvard or whatever. And then maybe you should work for a big hedge fund, but those are hard jobs to get. And then maybe you could raise money from some of the clients at the hedge fund and you could get started. And I'm like, you're talking about a 20-year period. I need to make some money. I was broke and I didn't
Yeah.
and I didn't have a job. And so I'll describe a little bit, but using the techniques and skip the line, there's two things you have to do. You have to build the skills first. So I had to build the skills to be a good investor, and that's hard because I think I'm a fairly intelligent person, and I sucked at investing when I started doing. I mean, I lost everything.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn the skills, and then you have to learn the field because, like my friend said, just because you're a good investor, nobody might know that. Like if you don't work at Goldman Sachs, the field is there's banks, there's hedge funds, there's high net worth investors, there's third party marketers who help you raise money. You have to be an expert. You have to know more than anybody else about the field you're going into. And that's different from the skills. So that's an important distinction. A lot of self-help books will say, oh, here's how you hack learning so you could meta learn and learn really fast. It's not just about learning skills. You've got to make money. We want to make money at what we love doing. To make money, you have to learn the skills and the field. That's incredibly important. And so I haven't heard any book really talk about that. And so in Skip the Line, and then I'll give some specific examples, I teach or I write about all the stories of all the times, not only I switched careers, but many other people. I have had 800 podcast episodes, so I talk about some of the people there who had skipped the line and how to learn the skills super fast so you could be in the top 1% of whatever it is you're interested in. And I'm not talking about some life hack. These aren't like shortcuts. These are better ways to learn than how we were taught in, I don't know, high school or college or graduate school or whatever, which are usually bullshit ways to learn.
Completely.
And then I give lots of examples, and then I talk about how do you also learn the meta skills you need to succeed in your field. So I have a chapter on persuasion, and again, it's not like, according to this academic paper, when
Right.
you mirror people's actions, they mirror you back. Like I've read all those books. I've tried the techniques. None of them work. Like maybe they work in a research study or something, but they don't work in real life. And so I said, okay, back off a second. What has worked for me in real life? Like what persuasion techniques have actually made me money, like even millions of dollars? And I just write about them and tell the stories. And then, also there's another thing I address in the book. So I guess there's one more thing, which is everyone says, oh, if you want to be an expert golf player, you got to do 10,000 hours. There's the so-called 10,000 hour rule where it
Yeah.
takes 10,000 hours to succeed at something and to master something. Well, that rule is total bullshit. Like it's good for things that where there's just a lot of repetition and and then you get feedback and then you repeat and then you get feedback and then you repeat. But there's very few skills that require that kind of work. And also, I don't want to wait 10,000 hours. So again,
That's
I
a
thought
lot of
about
years.
yeah, it's like it could be 10 to 20 years. I started doing at first as a hobby, but then I became obsessed. I started doing stand-up comedy like 6 or 7 years ago, and every comedian was telling me, James, you can't skip the line, man. You got to pay your dues. You gotta don't think you could just start, going on tour and doing all these shows on stage. People work really hard for years and years, man. I've been doing this 25 years. Got to work hard like me. And I'm 25. I'm gonna be 75 years old. Like what the heck? So I had to do these techniques to skip the line, and they worked. I mean, within a few, I sucked at first. Like anything worth doing, you're gonna suck at in the beginning because that's why
Yeah.
it's worth doing. It's hard, and I was touring around the world after a few years. Like I had skipped the line. Like these I wouldn't have written this book if I didn't feel strongly that these techniques work. And particularly now in this environment where 55 million Americans had to file for unemployment in the past year, this is a time to make changes if you want. If you want to be a chef, if you want to be in the sports business and because you're sick of trading bonds, if you want to be, a rocket scientist because you're sick of, I don't know, being a chemist, whatever you are.
Yeah.
And I've done this so many times, and it's been such a pleasurable thing there's there, mastery and freedom are two important keys to having really long lasting happiness, to raise your baseline of happiness. And so, it was just a pleasure to do all these activities and then to write about it and hopefully people learn from it. And I've worked with people and had them told them, showed them some of these techniques. And it's amazing how much people have accomplished that I did my podcast about this for the past year, and it's been a great experience. Sorry, I just went on and on, but that's what the book's about. But the beating the 10,000 hour rule, this is what I wanted to say. Beating the 10,000 hour rule, I developed what I call the 10,000 experiment rule, where it's through experimenting with things that you don't know in your field and maybe nobody knows. That's one of the most important skills for skipping the line, among a few others, but the 10,000 experiment rule, and it's really more like 100 experiments, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just wanted to call it the 10,000 experiment rule to match the 10,000 hour rule. But it's been amazing to like experiment on things that I'm interested in, and that's how you immediately learn so much more than everybody else, and you have stories to tell, and you find your unique voice. In order to succeed at something, you need to find some way to be unique in it. And through experimenting and making these experiments, and I describe how to do that, is how it's worked for me.